Has it ever happened to you that you finish a game and it makes you think, oh yeah, that was pretty fun, maybe one day I'll come back and replay it. And eventually when you come back, you think to yourself, wait, was this game always this good? I'm having way more fun than the first time. This is a phenomenon I find so fascinating. Video games are time consuming. Even if there's a title you adore the hell out of, you won't exactly consider replaying it right away. And it's so strange. I have games that I can tell you, yeah, these are my favorites of all time, and I've actually only played them once. But every now and then I come across some games that I finish and make me think, man, I feel there's a lot that I don't fully understand yet. I have to go through it once again. And indeed, a second playthrough was all I needed to appreciate them even more and elevate them to an entirely different level. And in this video, we're gonna be looking at some games who are great by default, but get better on repeated playthroughs. The only rule we have here is no roguelikes. And I think it's easy to see why. Those are games where each playthrough lasts about 1 or 2 hours, with the full intent of playing them over and over and over. So let's make the list a bit more interesting. If we're clear enough, then let's begin this video with a franchise that makes me sad every single time I think about it. Because it's Death. Dead Rising. Man, I'm not kidding. Every single year I find myself replaying at least one of these games. They're just so good. Killing zombies in crazy ways, saving survivors, uncovering a mystery, and fighting psychopaths. It's so much fun. Even if the last good game released over 10 years ago, I still love Dead Rising so much. And that is because of one core mechanic: the time limit. Every single playthrough you have a set timer to complete everything the game has to offer. This delivers a great amount of challenge, as you must balance between doing optional quests that grant you amazing rewards, fighting bosses, doing exploration, or continuing the main story. Naturally, on your first playthrough, you won't have any idea on where the survivors might show up, what they might ask of you, what moves the psychopaths will have, or what routes are the most optimal. Honestly, your first run, regardless if you get the best ending or a bad ending, should be used to get familiar with the game and, most importantly, leveling up. Yeah, I think this is pretty obvious, but when you begin a Dead Rising game, you start at level 1, and quite frankly, this sucks. You barely have any health, inventory space, special moves, access to great weapons, and you move very slow. And that, on top of the games being very clunky, you're bound to come across some unfair and even frustrating moments. But when you finish the game or restart your playthrough, your previous level will carry over, and together with the knowledge you acquired, your second, third, and fourth playthroughs of Dead Rising will be infinitely better than the first. When you come back, it's exciting to see how much better you have become at the game, saving more survivors, being stronger, and maybe getting the true ending. And even after that, you might want to come back again and rescue every single survivor, acquire all the combo weapons, or challenge yourself in different ways. With Dead Rising 2, I'm not kidding you, I can do a perfect playthrough where I save all survivors starting from level 1. I adore this game so much, I replayed so many times, so I know it back and forth. It's that magic that makes this franchise so special. And it also helps that your average playthrough of a Dead Rising game should take you between 10 to 15 hours, so yeah, it's not as short as a roguelike, but it's also not asking you to spend entire weeks just to finish it. By all means, if you're curious, I say give them a shot. It's one of my favorite franchises, and it makes me happy whenever someone still appreciates them to this day. But whatever you do, avoid Dead Rising 4 at all costs. It's horrible, it's seriously the worst game ever made, it killed my favorite franchise, it ruined my life, and I don't like it. PEEKMOND! Yeah, you know I had to bring these games up. It's funny because when you think about it, this franchise is here almost for the same reasons as Dead Rising. Both series are defined by their time limits, how you build your playthroughs around them, and how replayable they are. And that's the keyword here, replayable. When you get into a Pikmin game, your first playthrough is all about getting familiar with the game. Know each type of Pikmin, analyze every enemy, see the obstacles you'll come across, and how to get every single treasure in the game. When you come back, you'll be blown away with how much better of a player you are. And in the case of the older games, sometimes you might come across something you completely missed on your first run. And even after you do your second playthrough, you still have incentives to return. Every time you finish a Pikmin game, you get a results screen of your overall performance. How many days it took you to get to the credits, how many Pikmin were born, how many of them died in total, and they even divide that in the brutal ways each of them died. Burnt alive, drowning, eaten, squashed, you name it. It's messed up, but it's because of this results screen that it motivates the most hardcore players to come back once again and challenge themselves in different ways. Do everything in the least amount of days. There are people crazy enough to do playthroughs where you don't lose a single Pikmin, and hell, most Pikmin games tend to have a mission mode of sorts, which are just as replayable as the main campaigns, and will test your micromanagement skills in different ways. It's so damn fun! If I had to rank them in terms of replayability, Pikmin 4 is the worst in that area. Not just because the time limit is barely a problem here, but because 100%ing the game will take you around 30 to 40 hours. And I'm not gonna lie, by the end of this game, I was pretty exhausted. That never happened to me with Pikmin before. Until 4 happened. It's still an excellent game, make no mistake. It's just not very replayable in my opinion. Pikmin 2 is definitely closer to falling in that category. The time limit is also a big choke here, since you spend 70% of the game instead of caves where time doesn't move at all. To its defense, 2 is not as crazy long as 4, and I don't know, I feel that the more random and unfair nature of the dungeons makes it a bit more exciting and constantly keeps you on your toes. I'm probably a bit biased here since Pikmin 2 is my favorite in the franchise, but I still think it's fairly replayable. And at the top of them all, you have Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 3. The former because of its simplistic nature and punishing time limit, while the latter's mechanics of taking control of 3 characters at the same time make it a fantastic challenge to go through over and over again. Still, no matter what you choose in the end, all of the Pikmin franchise is incredible and you're bound to have an amazing time no matter what. But replaying them? Oof, that's when you really squeeze that extra. Here we have the most recent game to release at the time of this video, and actually the main reason I came up with this topic. Unicorn Overlord. I won't go too in depth about what makes this game a masterpiece, I already have 2 videos dedicated to it, so I'll just put it simple. Do you like strategy RPGs? Do you like games that give you more than what you paid for that base? Do you like Fire Emblem, or do you hate Fire Emblem? This game is just for you. A fantastic strategy RPG with a strong challenge, a likable cast of characters, engaging mechanics, and a lot of flexibility. It's funny because when you beat an RPG, normally you wouldn't think to replay it right away. These games tend to take more than 40 hours to complete on average. Unicorn Overlord can last about 60 to 70 hours. But this game gives you so much liberty to play it and so much flexibility in how you can overcome its challenges that it is worth to revisit. Let me explain for those who don't know what I'm talking about. In Unicorn Overlord, you control units, and said units are composed of individual characters, and said characters have their own classes that each have their own benefits, skills, and hard counters. So the point of this game is to build units filled with classes that cover for each other's weaknesses and synergize well. That already is a lot of fun on its own, but when you add more stuff to the equation like equipment, terrain, stage hazards, enemies being just as capable as you are, and RNG, it makes up for an extremely fun challenge. Every run can be very different from your last if you wish to. In fact, I've talked with friends that I convinced to play this game and ended up loving it.
Naturally.
But the coolest part about our conversations is that every single time they show me their units, they're completely different from what I did. Even after 2 runs, I ended up discovering more builds that never occurred to me before. And for the most hardcore fans of this genre, there's an even better incentive to replay Unicorn Overlord. After you beat the game for the first time, you unlock the True Xenoiran difficulty, which is easily the best way to experience this game. With limited item usage and the strongest enemies in the game, it will test everything you know about Unicorn Overlord and challenge you to the extreme. It's not impossible by any means. It's not as punishing and unfair like a lunatic or maniac difficulty in Fire Emblem, but it's no walk in the park either. And again, it's the best way to experience this game. It made me appreciate it even more. Unicorn Overlord was a game that I loved the first time around, but ended up adoring it after my second run. And if you accuse me that this video was just an elaborate plan for me to keep sucking off this incredible game, then yes, you're totally right. Play it. This one is a bit personal to me. I don't know if other people have felt the same way, but The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. When I first played this game, I thought it was amazing. I was honestly impressed with how good it was. And that's funny because my first time I kinda rushed through it. I borrowed the Wii U version from a friend and he was about to sell the console, so I kinda had to see the ending pretty fast. Even so, I felt that I did a lot my first time around. I did all the Divine Beasts, I got the Master Sword, completed the shrines I came across, and even got my own house. I loved it. But 1 year later, I managed to get my own copy on the Switch. The game was so damn good, I felt the need to replay it. And my second time around was miles better, and it's crazy! The first time around, I felt that I did a good amount of stuff, but when I returned, I found myself discovering new things I've never seen before. Like what to do with the dragons flying around, getting some never seen before armor, and even exploring an entire area I completely skipped over. I think that when I first played Breath of the Wild, I still had this chip in my brain on how I play older Zelda titles, so it rarely ever crossed my mind to do something out of the ordinary, to experiment with something. The joy of this game is how much freedom you have in doing everything you want, and that's something I didn't exploit to the fullest back when it released. My second run was magical because I was constantly discovering new things and overcoming obstacles in different ways than what I did the first time, and that in a way makes Breath of the Wild a very special Zelda game for me. Like, Tears of the Kingdom was amazing, sure, I spent over 100 hours on it and I do not regret it at all. And while it can be considered the superior game in almost every aspect, Breath of the Wild simply had a stronger impact on me, both as a gamer and as a Zelda fan. And all it took was a second playthrough for me to fully realize its full potential. As usual, there's a few games I will quickly like to mention before we move to the highlight of the video. First of all, we have character action games. You know, like Devil May Cry, The Wonderful 101, Hi-Fi Rush, Metal Gear Rising, Bayonetta, Astral Chain, and many others of this style. These are games where in your first run you need to get used to the combat mechanics, the different weapons you may get, unlock special moves, and most importantly, getting familiar with your combos. This is also in your second playthrough onwards you can return and take out enemies and bosses in the most stylish and fastest way possible, and hell, you can even test yourself by playing in higher difficulties. I can't think of any exceptions to this rule. These are games that only get better if you're willing to get better and you keep playing them more and more. Sonic Adventure 1. This is also a very personal one for me. Sonic games in general tend to get better when you replay them. Since now you're more familiar with the level design, it is exhilarating to try to get through the games as fast as possible. But Sonic Adventure 1 is an oddball. When I first played it, I thought it was a good game, just not in the same caliber as the perfect, the flawless, the immaculate Sonic Adventure 2! Sonic Adventure 2! I thought it was a fun but very clunky and not very replayable experience. Last year, however, I had this itch to go through it once again, and to the surprise of nobody, I ended up not just loving it, but adoring it! I can't fully explain what it is, but SA1 suddenly clicked with me the second time. I ended up appreciating everything on an entirely new level now. The level design, the different characters, yes, that includes Big the Cat. The music, and especially the story. Oh yeah, and that clunkiness I mentioned earlier, it didn't matter at all. The game was still insanely fun and charming. It really put into perspective how different this era was for Sega. And that makes Sonic Adventure 1 even more special. And finally, we have Pizza Tower. And just like the last time, this one is not getting the big spotlight because I already have 6 videos about it. Other games deserve to be praised too, but yeah, it still applies though. When you play Pizza Tower for the first time, it's a fantastic game. When you replayed it and try to get the P ranks, it becomes one of the greatest games of all time, and I'm not exaggerating. Those pesky P-ranks are the sole reason why this game gets even better. Because when you try to get them, it makes you appreciate every core aspect of this game even more. The fantastic level design, every single action that Pepino can do, the boss battles, and so much more. And all of that while you're getting a constant rush of adrenaline? Dude! It's borderline insane how much better this game gets the more you replay it. And that's not even mentioning the noise update, which can make your third and fourth playthroughs even crazier. Replaying platformers is always fun, but Pizza Tower took it to a new level. Anyway, it's time we talk about the final game, or in this case, games of this video. Nier Automata and Nier Replicant. If you have played them, then this should not be a surprise at all. Your experience past the first playthrough is something you just can't describe. There are games that leave you with a mark and with so much to think about afterwards. All will you probably break down in tears too. On the surface, the Nier series might not seem very special. The combat is good, but nothing too crazy. The characters are very likable, but that's it. And the endings leave you thinking, wait, is that it? They have this feeling of closure, but you can't help but think there was so much you didn't understand at all. And quite frankly, that is true! And not just that, it's 100% intentional! The biggest strength of these games is how they use your knowledge of your first playthrough and completely turn that around in future replays. Even if your adventure remains largely the same from a gameplay standpoint, the entire experience changes. Future playthroughs of Nier games don't just turn you a different ending. They tend to shed some light on things that may not have made a lot of sense the first time around. It adds so much to the lore and narrative, but most importantly, you get to witness different perspectives, not just from the main characters, but from the bosses you slay. It changes the tone of things so hard that by the end of it you can't help but think,
are we the baddies?
Nier Replicants and Nier Automata are games better enjoyed the less you know about them. Each subsequent playthrough exists to mess up with you even further, and by the end of them you'll be left with a barrage of emotions you can't describe. They're both magical experiences you owe to yourself to play. Now I want you guys to tell me, which games, in your opinion, get better the more you replay them? Did it ever happen to you that you ended up appreciating a game more after giving it another chance? I would really like to know that, so please, let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, thank you so much for your time, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, or Patreon. That will mean so much to me. Have a wonderful day, and take care! I'll see you next time!